My series Chess for Aspen, where I kind of go through some games that have some kind of topic that I believe will be useful for my very young son someday, and it's just a way of me leaving something behind for him, just in case he gets into chess a little bit later in life, and I'm not around. So we'll just jump right into it. And this game was played, I think, yesterday at some point online, and I'm playing white, and I start with e4. As far as openings go, it's kind of personal preference, to be honest. I think e4 is a very common move. It does have a lot more utility as far as letting other pieces out, but other moves are just as good, so long as we're following kind of general principles of trying to claim some territory in the center of the board. I mean, even moves like knight f3 could have been a valuable first move, because even the knight is going to exert that force in the center. Black chose to play c5, and this is known as a Sicilian defense, which is fine. This is a very common response, not quite as common as e5, but probably the second most common that I face online. And because of that, I'm very familiar with my favorite response, which is the Smith-Morra gambit. And so we immediately go for a d4. This immediately attacks that pawn. And what we're trying to do is get to the Smith-Morra results from, pawn takes d4. We're going to play c3. Pawn takes c3. Knight takes c3. So you can envision the knight sitting here with an open file, and later on, white can utilize the open and half open files on the C and D. So you can kind of picture all the pieces developed and rooks on the C and D file, and it's just a fun opening. That's why I choose it. However, black has different ideas with d6, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure I've ever faced this move. It didn't seem like a good move to me. I don't know. I'm not a chess grandmaster or anything. Maybe this is a popular move. It's just personally not something that I'd seen. And what I calculated was, well, why shouldn't I just take this pawn? It does give up a central pawn, but if black recaptures, then I'm going to snap off the queens. King recaptures, and now black's lost the castling right. And so, without too much more thought, I just kind of instinctively played d takes c5 here. And again, for the second time in a row, black surprises me with queen a5 check. And here really starts the reason why I picked this game to go through, because this move violates one of chess's basic opening principles, and that is you shouldn't bring your queen out too early in the game without very good reason. And you're going to see why that is here in very short order. I decided to just parry this check with knight to c3, a simple block, and then as I expected, black recaptures the pawn on c5 with the queen. Normally, I would be in the development stage here, moving the knights out first, because that's yet another kind of idea in chess openings where knights are generally developed before bishops. But here, black has given me a different opportunity to follow a different principle, and that is to develop a piece with an attack. Right? And the reason why we want to do this is because now it forces black to move or react in a certain way. Okay, black can't just do whatever they want, because there's a threat. And it's especially true with the queen. And so now we're kind of seeing, like, okay, now it makes sense why we don't want to bring our queen out too early in the game, because this is going to start black down a really rocky road. Okay, so black moves the queen to c7, saves, and now I developed that knight to f3. And I just want to take a moment to show you, because of this violation, black's violation of the opening principles, take a look at where we at now in terms of development. White has 3 minor pieces in play already. Black has exactly 1 piece developed. It's the queen, and it's moved now 3 times. And this is just going to spell disaster for black, as you'll see shortly. And this is just not a good idea. because white is already in an advantage, because just by virtue of the rules of the game, white goes first. So white's always going to be, or at least begins with, an advantage of the lead in development. But allowing me this much advantage is just, it's going to spell disaster, and you'll see. And here, black plays e6, a move that doesn't make sense to me very much, honestly. It blocks the light squared bishop in, but we're not here to analyze black's moves so much. I just continue my plan of development. Bishop to d3, solid move. I'm ready to castle. That's all I'm really focused on at this point in the game. And here, black plays knight to e7. And here, again, I want to kind of pause to show, because this is a good example of how we can, first off, analyze a move and what it's done to change the game, and try to discover what is black's idea here, right? And so initially, the first thing we'll notice is it blocks the dark squared bishop in. So that tells us something. It tells us that black has the plan of playing g6, bishop g7, and castle, and go from there. But we shouldn't stop there. We can also see that now that we know that plan, it's also cut off. It's going to cut off support for this d6 pawn, right? And suddenly we can say, now wait a minute, there are these ideas floating out there in the nether, if you will, of, say, knight to b5. Could be a cool move. It's going to attack the queen and this pawn, which, if we're right, is going to be a little bit weak pretty soon. And but again, just an idea. It's not something that's we're going to develop a plan on here yet. Besides, we have to finish our development, and so that's what we play. We're playing we castle, and now we're ready to go. And here, much like we, to our great pleasure, we find that black is following the plan. And here I decide to throw in bishop to d4. And the reason for this is because what I want to do, obviously the rook in the corner is being attacked. What I want to do is kind of force black to play e5, right? And that's exactly what black plays. And now you can see, because black is kind of committed to this plan of putting the bishop on g7, and once it's there, it's just staring at one of its own pawns. So this move actually makes sense in a way that, well, prompting this move made sense. So that's where we're at. And here, now we have to come up with a plan. And I decide to throw in, I see a lot of possibilities with knight to b5, and honestly, I didn't want to dig too deep. I played knight to b5 just to see what black would do. Because black wants to maintain, or should want to maintain, the defense of the d6 pawn. So there's a couple of options, and both of which lead to some really interesting tactical lines that I won't bother covering. It's a little bit too much probably for beginners, especially people like my young son. But and plus, it doesn't really yield much, because black decides to move the queen back to a5 anyway. So I'm not going to bore you with the analysis of that. So here, black just hangs the d6 pawn. So let's go ahead and take that with check. And after king d7, we're up a pawn. Black can't castle anymore, and now there's another kind of idea in this game. Notice that now the king is aligned with my queen, right? Because the first move, honestly, that jumped to mind was just to take the e5 pawn now, because my knight's hanging, right? Black could capture the knight, but there's also these pieces in the way of something that could end up being a really powerful discovered check. So I decided, because of that, to play bishop b5 check first, because if black decides to take the knight here, then bishop to c3 wins the queen. And honestly, there might even be better moves than that. this is just what I saw immediately, and that's why I chose this move. Black, I guess, saw it as well because Black decides to play knight e to c6 to block this check. And now we can go ahead and clear this file. I should actually explain this. We have two options here. Why did I not take the pawn? What might be a question that my son would ask here. Well, first off, I try not to play too materialistically. And to be honest with you, this did occur to me initially, because we need to defend this knight, right? Because once Black moved the knight to c6, it's opened up an attack for the bishop. So now the knight really is kind of in trouble, and we've got to defend it. Okay, this move then makes sense. Well, but there's also this move we should take a look at, and when you think about the bishops being placed next to each other on the board here, you can see that there are some, it's just more harmonious, if you will, right? And supporting this decision also is that the knight can capture this pawn at some other point with check. So that's why bishop c5 makes more sense to me here, right? And now that this file is open, we can see there is a definite threat of knight b7 check, right? This would be a discovered check from the queen, and Black's going to lose the queen. So pretty obvious threat though. Black sees this happening, plays queen c7, and now, hey, let's go ahead and take that pawn now, right? And now I want you to take a look at this position. This massive lead and development that Black handed me just in the opening series of this game has now resulted in just a horrible position for Black. In fact, I haven't analyzed this game really that deeply. There's probably a forced mate here. But it all depends on what Black does. I'm sure if you want to comment, I'm always open to improving my own game as well. Like I said, I'm not a chess grandmaster or anything. But anyway, Black moves king to e6, and here it starts to become obvious that Black is just in a mating net here. Let's bring in the queen to d5, and I think Black realizes that the game is over and resigns. But just for the sake of kind of finishing this game, there's only a couple of options for Black. I think probably the worst one is to retreat to e7 because that opens up queen takes f7 check, king d8 only move, and then queen e8 mate. So the the other option is I guess a little bit better, but still a forced mate. But here, people start to calculate forced mates, and beginners, and especially or my son wouldn't have that ability, say, in the beginning of their chess career. But I want to show kind of a line of reasoning that, here's the idea. What we want to try to do is get the king to just keep moving away from his own forces, right? So that's why in this position I would have played, knight to e8 check. And at first, this actually might be something that people would play anyway because it's an awesome fork. You just won the queen. But we're not going to play materialistically because Black's only move, king g5, actually leads to even more options here. Here I would have played knight takes f7 check. Again, with the idea, Black only has 3 possible moves here. Again, we're pushing the king further and further away from any kind of friendly forces that might be able to come to his aid. This is a discovered double check. So Black has 3 moves. These 2 moves lead to instant checkmate, just as one example, right? King to g4 is no different. So the only move to save mate in 1 is king to f4, but we're going to do the same exact move. Again, even if this pawn wasn't here, the idea is to get the king to just keep running away from his own forces. But here, I'm sure most people would be able to see that the only move, king takes e4, and then here there's probably three moves I can see right away that lead to mate. I probably would have chosen f3 mate just because pawn checkmates are just kind of funny. So that's this game. Again, the topics would be, a little. We've touched a little bit on some opening principles, which is don't move your queen out early, and this is the type of situation that can occur. But also a little bit on not playing materialistically. Look at what the game is showing you. Open files, we can make those happen, and then finally this mating net. If you're not able to find forced mates in 5 or 6 or whatever, what have you, following a general principle of trying to get the king to run towards your side of the board will suddenly, the mate will just be there. And it's true also, if you have to sacrifice a piece or a pawn to bait the king even closer to your position, that's going to play tremendously to your benefit. So and like I said, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. That's a thing. I'm new to the YouTube world, and if you have some pointers for me, I'm absolutely open to that, which would also kind of help my son in his chess journey. So appreciate your time, and I'll see you later.